So 14.8% inflation is where we hit in March of 1980.
Right.
And as a result of that, you tighten monetary policy. I remember it very well. You set an M1 target of 5.5%. And as a result of that, interest rates went up to 20%.
More than we ever expected.
And when you tighten monetary policy like that, it drove the unemployment rate up to 10%, and it caused the worst downturn in that period of time since the Great Depression. And you held tight in that. There were protests, there was anger, and you held tight in that, and you followed it through. And as a result of that, you broke the back of inflation, and in 1983, that inflation rate went down to 3% inflation at that time. And we began a decade of prosperity, of strong growth with low inflation.
And they may not remember the atmosphere as it was experienced. The inflation rate had gone up for more than a decade. There were kind of feeble efforts to deal with it. During the Ford administration, they handed out buttons. Whip inflation now, but it had more buttons than policy. And there was always this conflict, which always exists. Don't tighten monetary policy too far, you'll get some unemployment. So we went a decade that way, and we got more inflation and more unemployment. And when I took over the Federal Reserve, at the end of Carter's administration, President Carter was totally frustrated because he seemed to be unable to take any initiative anyway, because all this inflation was backfiring on him. He couldn't do anything on the budget, couldn't do anything on energy. All these things he would have liked to have seemed to be stalled by this fear of inflation, and it was very real at that time. And so he asked me to become chairman of the Federal Reserve. Well, it was obvious that existing policies weren't working. And actually, I was in the Federal Reserve before that, voting against some of those policies. But I decided we had to change an approach, and we got to stop worrying about increasing unemployment at any time. We got to deal with this inflation, or it's going to get worse and worse, because it was accelerating when it got close to 15% annual rate. And if we pussyfooted much longer, it was going to be 20%. And people were really fearful about the stability of the country. So we did tighten. It took a long while, actually, for the unemployment rate to go up. It was very stubborn, and the inflation rate was very stubborn. And we made one or two false moves we had to take back. It took a little longer than we thought, but I saw no other way to approach this other than kind of a bulldog biting at it straight out. And I got plenty worried in '82 when we did begin getting unemployment, and the damn inflation rate wasn't coming down, and the money supply wasn't coming down the way we wanted. But I felt we were stuck. We couldn't back off. All the effort we were making would be for naught. Fortunately, by the summer of '82, the money supply came down, inflation rate began coming down. We had a recession, but by the end of the year, it looked like the recession could be over, or at least stop getting worse, and it ended pretty quickly. But it took that last year of sticking with it that I think was necessary to do the job.